The 1990s were a transformative decade for American television and advertising. The country was still glued to network TV, cable channels were multiplying, and advertisers were experimenting wildly to grab our attention in a cluttered media landscape. This was a time before social media, before instant backlash, before every ad was vetted by focus groups of millions of people online. In the 90s, some commercials pushed boundaries, blurred lines, or outright shocked audiences. Some became iconic, others became notorious. A few were pulled, censored, or pushed out of rotation entirely, not because they were boring, but because they crossed lines American viewers and regulators weren't ready for. Tonight, we look back at the darkest, most controversial commercials of the 1990s that were banned, pulled, or became widely condemned in the United States, and what they tell us about advertising, culture, and media in that era. 1. Smart Beep. Blind Date, 1999. One of the oddest chapters of Super Bowl advertising history came at the very end of the decade. In 1999, a relatively obscure tech company called Smart Beep created a commercial intended for the biggest broadcast stage of all, the Super Bowl. The commercial was titled Blind Date, and it was built on cheeky humor rooted in bodily function, something that had become a recurring joke in 90s sitcoms and teen movies. In the ad, a man walks his female date back to his car after dinner. Moments later, in a private space, she lets out a loud, extended burst of flatulence, proudly breaking an awkward silence. The joke was meant to be absurd, intentionally juvenile and memorable, a contrast with the product's claim of being smart. But Fox, the network broadcasting Super Bowl XD3, refused to air it, deeming the flatulence humor too crude for the family audience that tuned in every year. The decision came before the ad ever saw the field, marking it as one of the few Super Bowl commercials rejected prior to airing due to content objections. Advertisers had long used humor to connect with audiences, but few expected such a public rejection in the spotlight of America's biggest TV moment. The Smart Beep commercial thus became a cautionary tale about just how far advertisers could push humor, even in a decade known for boundary-testing comedy. 2. Joe Camel, cartoon mascot. Under Fire, 1990s. Few advertising controversies of the 90s blurred the line between marketing and public health as dramatically as the saga of Joe Camel. Joe Camel was a sleek, anthropomorphic cartoon camel used by R.J. Reynolds to promote Camel cigarettes beginning in the late 1980s and into the 1990s. With sunglasses and a leather jacket, he was a symbol of cool, lounging at nightclubs, riding motorcycles, and smoking cigarettes with swagger. This was a time when direct television advertising for cigarettes was already banned in the United States, but Joe Camel lived on billboards, magazines, merch, and brand displays. Public health advocates were alarmed. In 1991, research published in the Journal of the American Medical Association revealed that children recognized Joe Camel at rates comparable to Disney's beloved characters, a shocking discovery that fueled public outcry. Anti-smoking groups, including the American Cancer Society, American Lung Association, and others, wrote to the Federal Trade Commission, demanding action. After years of review, the FTC concluded in 1997 that the Joe Camel campaign had appealed to younger audiences and was part of a strategy that attracted underage smokers. Faced with mounting litigation and federal pressure, R.J. Reynolds ended the Joe Camel campaign in 1997, effectively retiring one of the most controversial marketing mascots in American advertising history. To this day, Joe Camel serves as a stark reminder of the consequences when a fictional character becomes more recognizable to children than to adults. 3. Old Milwaukee, the Swedish Bikini Team, 1991. Sometimes advertising backlash comes not from government regulators, but from public protest. In 1991, the beer brand Old Milwaukee launched a campaign featuring the so-called Swedish Bikini Team, a group of blonde models wearing swimsuits and promoting beer in a series of TV and print ads. The commercials played on a classic advertising trope, carefree masculinity rewarded by attractive women and cold beer. While the ads were intended to be humorous and eye-catching, they immediately drew criticism from the National Organization for Women and Female Employees of the parent company. Critics claimed the campaign perpetuated sexist stereotypes, objectified women, and fostered a workplace culture of harassment consistent with the imagery being promoted. Faced with a mounting public relations storm, Old Milwaukee dropped the Swedish Bikini Team campaign after just a few months on air. Though not formally banned, the campaign's demise was tied directly to societal pushback rather than ratings or marketing metrics. It stands as an example of how shifting cultural attitudes in the 90s could stop an ad cold, even if it never ran afoul of formal broadcasting rules. 4. IKEA Gay Couple Dining Room Ad, 1994. In 1994, American audiences saw something uncommon on TV, a commercial portraying a gay couple in an everyday scenario. The ad, created for IKEA's dining room furniture line, showed two men shopping for a table, laughing and discussing their home life. At the time, it was one of the first U.S. ads to depict a same-sex couple without resorting to stereotypes or comedy. While the commercial was allowed to air, its life on television was cut short in many markets due to intense backlash, including thousands of calls to stations and protests by conservative groups. In some areas, broadcasts were pulled entirely or relegated to late-night slots. One IKEA store even received a bomb threat over airing the ad, a stark indication of how controversial even simple representation could be in that era. This commercial wasn't technically banned by the FCC, but its withdrawal under social pressure reflects the significant tensions around representation in media in the 90s and stands as an important moment in advertising history. 5. Calvin Klein, controversial fashion ads, 1995. Fashion advertising in the 90s often blurred the lines between art and exploitation, and Calvin Klein was at the center of that debate. In the mid-90s, the brand ran a series of ads that featured young models with suggestive poses and styling that critics said was dangerously close to sexualizing minors. In 1995, this provoked a public uproar and even drew scrutiny from the U.S. Justice Department, an investigation into whether the ads violated laws against child exploitation. While not all of these ads were formally banned, the controversy was intense enough that many networks and magazines refused to run them. The U.S. Justice Department's involvement elevated the issue beyond a simple marketing misstep into a national conversation on where the line should be drawn in advertising. Calvin Klein's campaign became a landmark example of how fashion's pursuit of provocative imagery collided with concerns about exploitation and responsibility. 6. Mountain Dew. Risk-encouraging, Do the Do. Stunts, 1990s. Mountain Dew's Do the Do campaign epitomized 90s extreme sports culture. It celebrated risk-taking, stunts, and adrenaline in ways that mainstream advertising rarely had before. One particular commercial showed teens performing dangerous cliff jumps and risky maneuvers with minimal safety messaging, a tone that mirrored the brand's offbeat, high-energy persona. While not formally banned by regulators, the ad drew criticism from parents, safety advocates, and broadcasters alike for seemingly encouraging reckless behavior among young viewers. At a time when concerns about youth sports injuries and media influence were rising, this spot became emblematic of a tasteless trend in youth advertising. 7. Just for Feet. Racist Super Bowl spot, 1999. One of the most significant advertising failures of the decade wasn't just controversial, it was widely condemned for its blatant racism. In 1999, the athletic retailer Just for Feet produced a Super Bowl commercial that attempted to promote its products by depicting a group of white men chasing a Kenyan runner through the wilderness, eventually subduing him and forcing shoes on his feet. The imagery instantly evoked colonial and racist tropes, prompting outrage from civil rights organizations, broadcasters, and viewers. The commercial was pulled quickly after airing. The backlash was swift and severe. The company faced consumer boycotts and legal threats. In many ways, this ad marked a turning point in how brands were held accountable for racial insensitivity in national advertising. 8. Anti-tobacco PSAs with disturbing imagery, 1990s. The 90s also saw a shift in public service advertising strategies, especially around tobacco and drugs. In an effort to jolt young audiences, some anti-drug and anti-smoking PSAs used stark, disturbing imagery, including graphic depictions of addiction and death. One particularly intense extended anti-drug PSA, for example, showed close-ups of psychological breakdowns and panic states designed to simulate the ravages of addiction. The imagery was so unsettling that schools and broadcasters refused to air it, demanding a toned-down version instead. Similarly, anti-tobacco campaigns that used graphic visuals of body bags and disease forced networks to reconsider their airing schedules, sometimes restricting them to late night or pulling them entirely from daytime rotation. The 1990s were a strange moment in American television and advertising history, a time when creative ambition sometimes outpaced cultural readiness. Some commercials became beloved icons, others became flashpoints. Whether they pushed boundaries of humor, confronted sensitive social issues, or unintentionally crossed lines of taste and decency, these ads reflect a decade in transition. We remember them not just for what they sold, but for what they revealed about the society that consumed them. In the end, these controversial commercials remind us that advertising doesn't just reflect culture. It sometimes challenges it, for better or worse.